Hello and welcome to the I3 lecture series hosted by the Masters in Digital Photography here at the School of Visual Arts. I am Julie Graham. Tonight we welcome advertising and editorial photographer and creative director Jai Lennard. Having grown up in California, Jai took his first photography course in my hometown of London before coming to New York and graduating from SVA's BFA photography program in 2008. With his photography, Jai tells stories about perseverance, triumph, legacy, love, and strength. His clients include The Hollywood Reporter, CNN, HBO, The New York Times, Los Angeles Magazine, Washington Post, Billboard, Town & Country, Warby Parker, Club Monaco, and more. One of his portraits was recently selected for the American Photography Juried annual publication. Aside from his own work, Jai founded the nonprofit organization Color Positive, which aims to network Black photographers, stylists, and directors in the editorial and commercial world. As well as promoting artists, Color Positive works as a mentorship program, providing artists in New York City schools to speak and mentor the youth. Let's hear it for Jai.
Okay. Thanks everyone for being here. It's really good to be back here at SVA. I did graduate in 2008, so it's been a bit, and I've loved this series, so thanks for having me. I have seen so many of these, and I would be remiss if I didn't start with some of my earlier work that I actually did at SVA, and then I'll kind of take you through a bit of my journey and go through some of the work that I've seen or that you've seen and that I've done recently now. So without further ado, as you mentioned, Julie, I'm from San Jose, California. I went to a private Catholic school for the majority of my before undergrad years. It had a huge effect on me, short story of not ever forgetting in 5th grade sexuality class for the first time, and it having a moment with me where one of the workbooks, said petting is a no-no. And I know this is going to sound like a weird way to start this conversation, but it will come into play. It had an effect on me, and it came off strange to me, and ever since I've sort of been, especially growing up in Northern California, being surrounded by gay, trans, the populace of the sexuality spectrum, and how conservative that upbringing was, I've always kind of rebelled against it. So when I got to SVA, I was immediately interested in telling stories that were subversive and engaging in conversations that people didn't immediately want to talk about. So, living in this suburban lifestyle, I really wanted to use some comedy and tell some stories about people who were engaging in their sexuality and trying to figure what that was for themselves, whether it be at home, by themselves, at the workplace, certain moments where you find, hey, honey, I'm home, and turn it into something that felt a bit more grand. I was very much already at this point inspired by advertising, and so I would take those elements for this work that I was doing at SVA in that time, and I made a series of work, portraits of people, not engaging in sex in any way, but portraits of them and me trying to tell you a story about them. These were large-scale images. Gregory Crewdson was a huge inspiration at the time for me, especially with lighting and details of storytelling, propping. These were images that I was creating, hoping that you would sit there for a while and really kind of look across the entire frame. What's going on? What's there? What's happened? What's going to happen? What's going on in their head? Why are they there? Why are they doing this? I just really wanted to engage people with this art that I was creating at the time. And so I made this work over the course of a few years, in and then coming out of SVA. And there were moments where I didn't have people. So then I started using those same stories and pulling them back enough to where I had just the props. And so then I started focusing on just elements from the photos. Visceral, tactile objects that I would lather with something or change with something just to get us to sort of, again, have a conversation about what's happened, what might happen, what could be happening. So, work after SVA, I was very much trying to head myself into the art world at this point. This is 2009, 2010. I started making a lot more work, started showing in galleries in Italy and in London and in Canada, abroad, and then a few shows, group shows here in New York. Again, trying to tell stories about subject matter that we would normally not publicly talk about. This series that I created for a gallery was really about two different things, which was the context of pornography and a genre that was becoming really popular, along with the idea of the male and female relationship of gift giving, and what that looks like when gifts are returned, whether they be pills, flowers, jewelry, thoughts of love, patriotism, food. Again, me exploring with my light and storytelling and pulling things back and objects to start a conversation, really. So with that said, part of my other background before coming to SVA was focusing in psychology. I have a background that focused in child development and sexuality. And so I was using that study, those 3.5 years of studying before I came to SVA to make this work. And there was a point where I felt like I was sort of running out of people. And so I went back to the child development part and I started going into schools, and I can't use kids. So I started excuse me, haven't said that word in a long time. Anthropomorphizing? No. Yes? It's close enough. It's pretty close. It's pretty close. I haven't said that word in a long time. I started using these objects as a kid. So the chairs represent these children in these scenarios, and what I'm exploring is these moments where emotion is heightened. Again, as I started this conversation, I went to a private Catholic school in multiple areas of my life. It had a huge effect on me, good and bad. And I take that to heart, and I really love this part of my early experience of making work because I got to explore some of that. So these are these scenarios of being a kid in school. There's sexuality involved, there's anger involved, restlessness. It allowed me to explore space more and understand what rooms do and be with myself and create work that was ultimately going to hone in on skills that I would later use in work that I'll get to. So with that aside, that early work aside, translating a lot of that work and those skills that I developed of lighting and being in spaces and trying to tell story and using objects translated into some of my first jobs. There were people in the advertising world who saw that work and they were like, this is crazy, but I love your light and I love how you're approaching this. Let's get you in on some smaller projects. I immediately started shooting for Complex Media, and under that umbrella, I started shooting an array of G-Shock, Dr. Pepper, Coca-Cola. All these advertising spots were at the time about $500 per job. This was in the advertorial world, which we don't really talk about anymore. It's all online, Instagram, social media space. That's what advertorial turned into that we have now. Smaller projects for big clients. But this was really a shift for me to help tell other people's stories. Ultimately, though, what connected for me was that I was telling real people's stories. Even though the stories from the previous work were a combination of read stories and me embellishing my imagination with those read stories, I was always trying to follow a through line of where are they going, where are they coming from, what are they doing, and I use that in this work. This is a job for Bank of America that I'll kind of bring back around later. Another small paid job that came up as an opportunity, and this was kind of shooting over video. So I got asked last minute to jump on this set. It was really fun, but ultimately I also tell the story because was an opportunity for me to shift into the space that I ultimately wanted to be in, which is advertising and editorial. Having this opportunity, especially for a job like this, Bank of America, you'd expect some sort of red carpet, there's money involved as a bank. Not at all. 2 days of work, $2,500 all in. And you know, I said yes because it was a really good opportunity for me to be on set with other people, work with a new client, work with a new producer. And you know, looking at the contract, I said to myself, they want a few images for 2 years. I'll do my best. I'll bring out the red carpet for them, and ideally, they want something else later. So, doing a lot of that small work ultimately made me realize, you know, where I was headed, trying to get into this advertising and editorial world, and what I was also missing. So I started going around to magazines for the first time after even getting those small paid jobs and trying to figure out where I fit. All those first gigs I started getting were office jobs. There was a good 3 years of my career that I was literally just shooting people in offices. And you know, you work from the ground up. It was fun to a certain extent. And I like working with real people. That's really, I think, at the heart of what I do best. I try my best to connect more than anything and create a space for the people who I'm with. It's really about emotion, even if it's just a business guy at Fox News, a place that I would normally not think to be, but you never know where you're going to end up. And so I did this a lot for a lot of magazines, like I said, for about 3 years. And you know, as proud as I am of a lot of that work, I turned around and realized, wow, I've really come a long way from making that subverted sexual work to people in their offices in a very short amount of time. And not only that, but trying to build a career for myself, I realized, oh, suddenly I have 20 pages of people in their offices. And I'm like, wait, what am I doing? Is this where I want to be? Am I enjoying this? What's next? And so ultimately, after doing a lot of this work, this is, you know, I call this the guerrilla days. A lot of low-paid work, stretching your skills and your imagination to create something that has some feeling and some emotion and that identifies with whatever story the editorial is trying to tell. But ultimately, I knew that I was looking for more. I wanted to work with talent. I wanted to be more creative. I'm trying to bridge the gap between the creation that I had earlier in my career and what I had been led into in these office spaces. And so I had to take another step back. and realize I really need to start creating another look for myself, which I think a lot of artists have to do at some point. We don't always get to pick and choose where we're going to be or how we're going to get there. So I think it's just always important at any part of your career, I've learned over the last 15, 20, to take a step back and create more work for yourself, create the work that you want to show. And so in doing that, I found another opportunity with the UN. A close friend of mine came into town from Geneva and said that they were going to a conference that lasted 3 weeks. It's called the Conference on the Status of Women. And this has been happening at this point for over 60 years. Women from around the world come in to the UN to talk about the state of women, healthcare, money, cultural issues, everything under the sun. It's jam-packed 3 weeks of constant meetings and information gathering. And I basically partnered with a few youth coalitions to create work that I thought would lead me into the space of where I'm at now. This is me for 3 years in a row showing up completely just pro bono, showing up with a backdrop and an intern, and spending 2 full days each year and allowing about 40 to 60 people come into the room. I spend about 90 seconds with them, and I do my best to connect and pull something out that feels good, because they're also going to get these images and use them to promote whatever social issues that are on their mind or their agenda. This was great practice for me. And you know, I just think it's, I really like sharing this because, again, a part of the journey, a lot of the work that I think people know me for now was really just created in the last 3 or 4 years, just out of the pandemic. But this is the work that really brought me to that. Being quick, being creative, working a 4-foot backdrop 60 different ways. Honing in on those types of skills, I think, has really kind of brought me forward into the space I'm at right now. And being opportunistic. This was a moment in that shift where I was realizing certain things about what I really do love. Not only just telling stories, I think a lot of us love telling stories if you're in photography, if you're in media, but the type of stories that I love telling, as Julie mentioned, you know, perseverance, struggle, people overcoming. I was realizing at this point, being in New York long enough, that I had friends who were also getting deeper into media. This is a story that I tried to pitch to a magazine over and over again, we have this man on the left here who created a show on HBO called High Maintenance. Beautiful, beautiful show that was so popular just after like around 2012, about New Yorkers, everyday typical New Yorkers, walking down the street, interacting with each other, but the through line was marijuana. And they weren't even always smoking, but like there was a handoff, and then you would go into their life. What were they doing for the day? I really love these stories, and I love the creator, and we had met randomly. And so him and another friend, Abdullah here, who also now has a show on Hulu, they were both big marijuana advocates. And I was like, we should be doing a story about how marijuana is entering media right now. Again, a story I pitched several times, never went anywhere, but I got these images and they became a part of my book, and it became an opportunity for me to sell myself more to other people who wanted to see what I was really capable of and what I wanted to do with the work. Not just being in offices, but to tell stories that mattered to me. That connection also for me was that my father, being in California, had been growing marijuana for like 40 years. So it's not something I wasn't, you know, unaware of, and it was something that I thought should be advocated for. So doing all this work, shifting, trying to create opportunities for myself and seeing the opportunities in front of me, there's a story that I especially like to tell in the last couple of years. There was a turning point. Ask for what you want. So Sarah Jessica Parker here was the first celebrity that I ever photographed. I did this for free. This was for a friend who was doing PR and had just transferred from one agency to another, and the agency that she went to had Sarah Jessica Parker's shoe line. So she was like, this is gonna be 30 seconds, but if you can show up and make something work, please. And I was like, absolutely, I need this. So I did, made something work. It took about 90 seconds and we got something. And this was also a moment where I first learned working with celebrity about how to connect. This was a moment that I'll also never forget where, you know, normally it's just in my nature to want to make everyone feel on the same plane as an equal. And so this was a moment where when I approached her, when we had our 90 seconds, I started to sort of calmly explain to her, hey, this is going to be easy. Just sit down right here. And as I said that, she was like, don't. And she wasn't rude about it, but she was like, I've done this so many times. Take the picture. And I was like, yes, okay, I get it. It was a good learning moment for me. Everyone's different. And, you know, not everyone wants to be on the same playing field, you know? And you have to read people and get into the room and understand their energy and understand their background and who they are and treat them as such. So took that moment and realized that I had at least one celebrity. So a lot of those office shots that I did were for entertainment magazines. Hollywood Reporter, Variety, Entertainment Weekly. No talent, these are executives in their office, green lighting projects. And so I had so many of those, about 3.5 years of those. And I took Sarah Jessica Parker and I took another shoot, about 8 images, and I put them together and I presented that and I said, hey guys, love working with you. It's been 3 years and I would love to work with some artists. And I sent that email over, and the director of this magazine, who I'd been working with, who had never responded to an email from me in 5 years, okay? Director, not the photo editor. She responded to me 3 hours later. And it was at midnight, she called me, and she basically said, Jay, I'm gonna fly out to LA next week and we're gonna do a cover together. And that was a moment that was so important to me, to realize about asking for what you want. I feel like it's not something that we kind of talk about a lot, just vocally, like out loud. I think a lot of us as photographers sort of think that in this, you know, chasm of photographers and editors and people who hire us and art buyers, they all just understand that we want to shoot something cool, you know? But that's not the case. They don't always think about it so directly. Every project is different, and you really just got to ask for what you want sometimes. And that was a really good moment for me to realize that. So I did a cover with Mahershala Ali and his stylist in LA for their annual stylist issue cover. And that was a huge moment for me. It wasn't just the first cover, it kind of changed my career. It led me into where I'm at now, into entertainment, which was another thing to come to, because for me, which I haven't mentioned yet, coming from California, so many things I'm interested in, and I did start this, you know, conversation on my personal journey and making artwork, but I actually grew up on stage for most of my life into college. I grew up dancing, I grew up singing, I grew up acting, I grew up playing music. I did commercials. I was just constantly in front of the camera from first grade on until my second year of college. Knowing all that, it never hit me for the first like 5 or 6 years that I would be in entertainment. It just really never occurred. I came into the industry wanting to do fashion. When I took my first photography course in London, I was obsessed with fashion. I went to London because all the magazines that I was in love with were being published there. So that's why I took my course there. it was a journey to realize and be reminded who I really am and why this is going to work and why it's authentic to me, and why I'm going to make easy connections, because I'd been on stage, I'd been around people who are on stage. There's just something, there's an emotion, there's a feeling, an aura that you just can't fake, I think, and it just came easy after that. And so a few months later, Same Magazine, Hollywood Reporter, who I've been working with for years now, hired me to do the Clive Davis annual Grammys portrait. Clive Davis, renowned producer in the industry for 50 plus years now, sitting on that bottom right. He has a party every year right before the Grammys, invites a whole cast of sorts, artists, and this was another moment where I talked about those skills that I had used and developed on all those other shoots to get to this point where we did this shoot, 2 different options, everyone there, and individuals of every single person in under an hour. Just got to be really, really quick. And it was great to be able to have that moment and understand what it meant to create energy. Having my background in music, I lean on that so much. You are never going to be on a set with me without music, and I lean on it very heavy, and if people aren't dancing a little bit, then I'm going to change the music until they are. It's really about energy. I'm less concerned with the specific image I need. I'm more concerned about how my subjects are feeling. I know I'm going to get a good image if they're feeling good. So yeah, under an hour. This is like 45 seconds each person. They kind of just jump in front of you, and you talk to them for about 10 seconds, and then you do a little dance, and then it's over. That led me to realize that I'm actually pretty good at wrangling people. So I've done a lot of group shots since then. And also with my background on assisting, I did that for about 9 years through all of this. Coming out of SVA, all that work that you saw in the beginning, I was assisting other photographers while making that work. And I got a really great education doing that. I was on set with a lot of great photographers. And I took those skills to be able to do a lot of this work. Being asked to do promos for a TV show in an editorial setting, which is a lot of the work in entertainment now, meaning that, like, you know, if Entertainment Weekly is doing a cast portrait for a new show, then that production agency and who put on the show is in cahoots as well. So you're seeing this for Apple TV. And a funny little note about this is that this is not strobe. This is all constant light. And the backdrop is actually partially projected. So the lightning you see in the back is live, and it's flashing. So doing little skills and little tricks to like create a mood, create ambiance is also something that I'm really into. I love experimenting. I love experimenting with light. And there's, you know, every now and then I get the opportunity to really play with that. Also, this is in a conference room. I've done so many conference rooms. More group shots. This is the first one for me where I don't have a set. I don't have props. I know you're seeing them, but they're actually not there. And that's a different experience for me as well, kind of going farther into my career. Everything here is post, and they did a really good job. But yeah, it's a different world to try and create an ambiance when there is none. Like I said, I really rely on music, and it was easier than not with these group of ladies. They really like to party. Real Housewives of Potomac. But yeah, bringing those skills of wrangling and core-horsing big groups and bringing them together and bringing up energy is really, I think, why clients come back on repeats. They understand that I'm not just going to get an image, but people are going to walk away feeling good about what they got and how they felt and what the experience was. And that's what I really lean on for all my shoots. The cast of 60 Minutes hosts over the last 3 decades. Really special for CBS. I'm a problem solver more than anything. This room looks like a decent size, but I kid you not, it's as big as this front space right here. I just make it look big, and we had to kind of piece it apart and put it together. But the thing is, I genuinely love problem solving. I love a good problem. I love coming in to have to rig something, to hook something up. I love it when it's not straightforward. This was a really good experience to kind of not only do that, but do it in front of such a prestigious a cast of hosts. This is down in New Orleans. This was for a movie that just came out 2 years ago. This was an interesting moment to be able to go down to New Orleans. I have family in Louisiana, so this is the first time me shooting down there. It's really beautiful, and there was really no support, just me and an assistant and a few lights. Trying to create something that feels intimate is also what I usually lean on, and I think that's a callback for me back to that first work. I use intimacy in a lot of my work, and that really, the intimacy has nothing to do with sexuality. It's about creating closeness and developing that through the images. I especially like to do that with men. And so this story was actually, these are the 2 female directors behind them. But it's about these 2 young Lakota boys and them growing up on a, on a Dakota nation, and what their experience was, and trials and tribulations, and being able to do that and try to get something intimate from them and be in this environment, and also try to create a space that felt like it was for entertainment, like it was for Hollywood. Mixing environment, putting backdrops with natural elements is something that I really love to do. So yeah, like this was another element of me being able to come in and push that and develop that more and be able to show that work. Charlemagne the God, if you don't know him, is a legendary I guess, radio show host. Yeah, it's radio, right? Yeah. So, I guess I say that because whenever I see him, it's like through a screen. He has so much video now of himself. But, he's a very outspoken dude, really smart, but very outspoken. And I was called to do this project specifically because of the intimacy that I create with the men in my work. They wanted something quiet of him. They wanted something softer. This is for a mental health magazine. And so that was really an awesome opportunity, and also to be recognized for continuously doing that style of work, of bringing in people and getting something that felt more intimate, more soft, that felt more quiet, that felt more natural, to get a different side of him. It's always my goal to enter into a portrait session and I hope it doesn't sound trite, but get something iconic. I genuinely want to have the best pictures of that person that they've ever had. That's always my goal. I want them to leave thinking that these are the best. I feel good with these. I want these as my Instagram profile. I want my mom to have this photo. Yeah, that's always the goal. And he walked away saying that, so that felt really good. Same with Fat Joe, music artist, bringing in people, being close, going up to people, putting down the camera. I usually don't approach subjects with a camera when I first meet them, especially on set. I talk to them first for a few minutes, if I can, if I have the time. Normally my sessions are 15, 20 minutes. So if I can take 2 to 3 to talk, it makes all the difference. It really does. And You know, Fat Joe has decades of imagery of him looking cool and being tough, and being a big, strong dude. But this was for men's health. This was about him losing weight. This was about him not being Fat Joe anymore. And so pulling him into a new space was perfect for me. And he, again, walked away literally saying, these are the best images of me. Thank you. Again, creating space for people is, I think, really what my photography is about. It's the image making is just an access point. Yeah, Twitch. He passed away just about 8 months after this. So sad to lose such a great talent. More moments of intimacy for me. This is a really big day, 40 people in a day for Fox Entertainment. Anyone under, this was 2022, yeah, 23. Anyone under the Fox name that year was there in the studio to get their portrait taken. So hosts of shows, major actors for television shows. Yeah, and so it's another moment where I fall back to those 3-4 years of shooting 40 people in a day for 2 days and using a 4-foot backdrop to get to this point where my backdrop is 20 feet and I have 60 people and I have help, and being able to have a bit more time and more space to create and make moments that are hopefully a bit more lasting. But ultimately, you know, one of my biggest loves is dance. As I said, I was on the entertainment side, and movement is a big part of my work as well. These are moments that really resonate with me because I love it when someone is aware of their body. I love to direct, but I love to flow with someone. All of my assistants make fun of me because of the way I move behind the camera. I move a lot. I do a lot of squats, or I think they look like pliés. And so being able to run around with other dancers is awesome. This was for Avenue Magazine. Gianna Reeson here is the youngest choreographer for the New York City Ballet. And this is also a special moment for me because my very first job in New York City was working the bar at Lincoln Center. Definitely serving drinks for like 15 minutes at a time at the matinee and before people walk in. So it was cool to come back, like, you know, 10 years later and have free reign of the entire place to run around with this dancer and create some images. As I've gotten deeper into my work, you know, I've steered away from just sort of using Gregory Crutzen as a piece of inspiration. I've dug much deeper into a plethora of work and fashion, and I love color. It's just so important to me. I do the majority of my retouching. I love camera tricks. All this is in camera. I love adding color to the imagery. I always have an ambient light. I light my subjects, and then I see what I can do to light them. And then after I'm done with that, I add another light to create ambiance. It's just an added effect, whether it be flare, bringing up the room, adding shape. It's just always something about texture for me that I love to add in color. I had a series with the New York Times for about a year. This was their first year, in which I believe it's still going. They started a series with me called Speaking in Dance, and they were basically sending me out to new shows that were in practice before opening. And so I would get an hour with a few dancers or a principal lead dancer, and we would create a video and do still images in an hour. It was really rough. It was barely paid, but I had so much fun doing it. And this is a lot of that work. This is kind of just me being able to play and have fun and move with dancers and get a bit of a kick out of kind of going back to my roots a little bit. This is Niles Tenson for the Nutcracker, for the New York City Nutcracker. So these are moments when I don't have a lot to work with. I really do rely on my lighting skills, and I still do want to tell stories very badly. This was a serendipitous moment working with Terrence Keel at UCLA in LA. This is a story about him being the first professor to integrate racial politics and religious studies. And when I got there, it was his office, and it was like 6x6 room, very tiny. It was a desk. He had nothing on it except for these books that you see here, maybe like 4 more to the left. No picture frames, nothing on the wall, no cabinets. I was like, do you work here? And so I was like, what am I going to do with this? So I got some black wrap and I cut out a cross. And then I used different pieces of colored gel and put them on the window. And so I was trying to tell the story of him being a religious man at this campus. And so the cross is displayed on his body if you catch it. And then I was trying to create that window pastel light that you would get in the church to be displayed on him. Certain details like this are exactly what I was doing in that project, in those projects with SVA. Telling those portrait stories of people in their bedrooms, using small spaces, not having a lot. But when I have free reign, when I get everything I want, when I have time and talent who knows how to move, and I can have fun, this is what my work looks like right now. It's more energetic, it's playful, it's fun. I like to experiment with movement a lot. This is Kalila for Billboard. Yeah, this I think for me, this is really me. Part of gathering these backdrops was that her sound is so fluid, and there was water in my head the whole time I was concepting this. And so I got a water backdrop and put it on the floor. And even if you don't really put the 2 and 2 together, the color alone just, it pulls certain emotion for me. And like I said, I lean on color a lot to sort of, not just for me, but I think for my audience to tap into certain feelings. I think certain colors bring out certain moods. She was really fun. Similar with Eva Longoria. This was her directorial debut after being an actress for many years. She just premiered her movie 2 years ago. I always say it wrong. Is it Flaming Hot, for the Hot Cheetos movie? And so we were like, what are we going to do? And I was like, well, it's got to be red, and it's got to be fun, and it's got to feel spicy. So this is what we came up with. And I always start with a quick portrait, but I was playing music. I'd already had a playlist ready to go for her, but she walked in, and she walked in on this moment where I didn't even realize that one of the songs playing was actually about her. The title of the song was her name, and when she walked into the studio. So it was like very serendipitous. It created a great mood. And so, it was lucky that happened. She wanted to dance. And so I kept on that mood, and we ended up, because we got so much movement, it ended up being a moving cover. Harper Waters is a premier dancer for the Houston Ballet. This is in a parking lot in Houston, and I'm really big on texture. I've really fallen into loving velvet in the last few years, so these are just my backdrops that I own. I use black velvet a lot. I love what it does in so many different ways. And this was a moment, this was one of my first moments kind of using it with him a few years ago. And just being out and kind of being free and using the natural light to sort of create these moments with him. This is really what I love. Again, kind of pulling out the intimacy, having a little bit of fun, and hopefully pulling in my viewer a little bit with what's going on. So on the other end of not, being able to get always what you want, you got to get creative. And this was a moment where it was January last year, and it was freezing out, and we only had about an hour. And so, and that's with, and we thought we might get changes, but this talent, Coco, who's so sweet, also just happened to show up in a very tiny dress. So there was really no options for us to like do a lot of movement or anything. So we got some really nice portraits. But it's always about being creative for me. Even if the story doesn't fully come across, there's always hints of something there. If you don't know who Coco is, maybe you get the idea that she's sitting behind a piano, even though it's not a piano, it's a desk that's really reflective that we pulled off the ground. Getting her to move outside, this is a moment where she was really entering the music space, really wanted to hone in on that glamorous effect. And so where this studio was is just across from the New York City Library. What is that, just towards Midtown. And so, very reluctantly, she said yes to go outside for just a moment. And we basically just did 2 runs of this, about, I think it was about 90 seconds. And she came down the steps once, didn't quite work, my flash wasn't going. I said, please just do it one more time, and then we got this on the left. This guy helped me. Again, back to pulling people in, creating space for people. I love working with new talent. It's part of the reason that I got that first cover that I spoke about earlier with Mahershala Ali. Me realizing a long time ago that I wasn't going to be in the fashion space. And I feel like that's very well known what to do, how to get in there, even if it doesn't work A to B. People have the idea of, I'm gonna test, I'm gonna get models, I'm gonna shoot different looks and make work. Leaving that behind, I had to wrap my head around how to create this new work. And so understanding for myself that I can go to PR agencies and be like, oh, you have new talent. I would love to test with your new talent who's like trying to be on screen. Really made a huge difference for me. And for me, that has become really, and what it always has been about, but more so now, about creating relationships, long-lasting relationships. More so now these days, I show up with gifts to my sets, especially for the right people. Dominique here at the time, she's a big star now. She's done probably 4 or 5 movies since we did this, and a huge Amazon successful show. But when we showed up for this, she was just getting on the scene. And I thought, you know what, this is a moment also in the second year of COVID, so we're outside masked. I was like, this is a moment where I can lean back on some of my earlier inspiration, portrait work that I love, artists like Annie Leibovitz, to lean on that old Hollywood look. And so I asked the scenic that I've been working with for years to create a chair for the actress. And so that was what I showed up with to gift her, her own actress chair. And so we shot the chair, and then she got to use that. And I think these types of moments really create a bond quickly, and allow for a lot to happen through the shoot later. Giving something of yourself, giving anything, whether it be your time, your energy, thoughtfulness. Again, I don't usually have a lot of time with most of my subjects. It's usually very quick. Most of my subjects are doing 5 different things that day. It's not fashion. They're not there to make a bunch of looks. So, with Dominique here, we did 3 looks, but we did it in about 2 hours. And so this was the first look, and we started here, and we got this really beautiful moment with her in her chair. And another look outside as well. These are 2 different stories, but I included these because I said before, I love technology, I love light, I love being able to scope and play, but I've always been someone who kind of started off with nothing, very minimal, and so being able to always kind of go back to that is really important to me. These are 2 different stories for Men's Health where I was able to do that. One for Cory Booker, who has a farm out in New Jersey, and I got to spend about 45 minutes with him on that farm that he was promoting. He's a huge advocate of food wellness and health, and Kwame Onwuchi on the right is an amazing chef who used to be in the Obama administration as a chef, and then now has 3 restaurants. Also a huge wellness and food health advocate. Creating these moments with these guys outside, using a scrim as a backdrop, getting creative, and letting light fall and pulling them in. I'm always really close, especially with the men, is something that I really love to do. And it allows me to sort of go deeper into that world of kind of creating these portraits that tell stories of these figures the way that I really want to, which is a softer side, something that feels a bit more personal. Charlie Crockett here for the cover of Texas Monthly in Austin, Texas. Similarly, being outside, really cool moment for me. Sounds kind of funny, but I always wanted to do a train shoot. And they really did that for me. They rented a whole train sort of station where you can go in Austin, and there's like 7 or 8 trains, and you can just go in and out of all of them. It's a kind of a playground. I was like, thank you. I really got my wish that day. It was really cool. And, again, working with men in this way and getting a softer side, pulling him in. This is one of the very, very few shoots in my career that I actually got the day with him. We started off in the late morning and we ended up in sunset. That was just, this was really special for me. Creating that space, again, was the entire process for me. And I know whether, for me, my meter is always, are they gonna come to me and let me know? Communication's huge, especially for me as a photographer. And I think equally as a subject. It doesn't always mean that someone didn't or did not have a good time if they don't tell you, but it does mean a lot if they did. And creating space and to do that and be vocal is also important for me to do that. Telling people I'm grateful for their, not just for their time, thanks for the day, but like, oh, I've been listening to your work, I've been reading your work, I'm really interested in you. Creating space is super important for me. We finished that day and he was like, I need you to shoot my album cover. And that meant the world to me, and I think, aside from the photos themselves, that's what I walk away with, and that's what's really important to me, creating those relationships. Another moment of, again, pulling people in, the Marcellus brothers, Wynton Marcellus and his brother, Bradford, thank you, appreciate that. Huge moment for me. I grew up playing jazz from 4th grade until 2nd year of college. They just lost their father, who's a huge figure in the jazz community. And they had not left their home for 2 years because of COVID. So this is their first time leaving the house, leaving the city, leaving New Orleans. They came up for this cover for Town and Country. I immediately knew what that meant and what a big deal that was. And having my background, I think, was one of the reasons why the editor who knew me paired me up with them. Not just the jazz background, but him knowing how I treat my subjects. I showed up with some whiskey from a black-owned company, and they were ecstatic. That's how we started the shoot. And I gotta say, I started the shoot like that also because, you can give a gift at the end, but this is one of those moments where, especially with guys like this who are so talented, who've been doing it for so long, everyone wants a picture with the horn, like in every shoot. That's the goal. And they do it less than half the time. Editors will, always warn you about a subject. And when I say warn, it's not always bad, but, give you details about what may or may not happen. And they were like, they said that they may or may not have the horns. They're probably not going to bring them out. This is going to be very quick. They're not quite in the mood. But I changed their mood, and that was my goal. And we were there for 2 hours, and we thought it was going to be 30 minutes. And they started playing over the top of the jazz music that I was playing. So I got a free show. It was fantastic. But again, I think it's, me calling back to just, for me, I'm not focusing on getting a great image. I'm focused on creating great space to get something great. And this was definitely, for me, an Annie Leibovitz moment, with the gray backdrops and the wood and the boxes. I don't get to say this a lot, but I went to SVA, and that was, it was, had such a profound impact on me in so many ways. And one of them is that it led me to a mentor really early outside of SVA, who used to be Annie Leibovitz's first assistant before Nick Rogers. Nick Rogers is probably the person you're most familiar with, who always stands next to Annie with the photech. He's in all the books. But before she started publishing the books, the guy who taught me how to shoot was her first for about 7-8 years. Really militant guy. So I say that because I sort of come from that camp, that way of thinking, the way of lighting and approach, and I do openly borrow a lot of those elements from that, from that camp. So Coda won Best Picture 2021, I think it was. This is a story about a deaf family, and really beautiful story. Amazing actors. This was such a great moment of going in and being pretty scared about how I'm going to communicate. So I spent like 4 days prior, hours and hours trying to learn ASL. Like, just like just hoping I could remember a bunch, which was not going to happen, but I was just going to do my best. And when I got there, this was just such a surprise because I've been talking so much, especially through this lecture, about how I want to create great energy, but they brought all the energy. I would have never thought that this group of people who are using their hands to speak are so enigmatic. They're just so ready to emote. This was such a wonderful gift to be able to be in this sort of session, in which around it I thought to myself, I'm going to try and create as much energy with light and movement as possible on top of that. And so, we got these images. Marlee Matlin, fantastic actress. Chris Rock, for the Hollywood Reporter. This was my last shoot actually before going to COVID. And he was sick on that shoot. I didn't get COVID from that, but he was definitely sick on that shoot. Yeah, so this is another moment of leaning into the story. This is him coming off of the fourth season of Fargo, where he plays a Kansas City mob boss. And so, knowing that this was going to relate to that story, and also why he has the hair and mustache for that, we thought, let's lean into this. Let's lean into these vibes. So we got a smoking room, cigar lounge in Midtown, and just tried our best to lean into this character. But even still then, making him look strong, I'm still doing what I do, which is pulling him in to get something that feels intimate. I really love these images. We only spent about an hour and a half together. We got 3 or 4 looks, but really, really great day. Thanks. So.
How are you doing? We need to leave time for questions.
Yeah, I'm about to wrap up actually, yeah. So, just gonna take you through these last pieces. Just expands on my work of being on set in video, creating more moments, being on BTS, not having control, but still trying to create moments that are usable, that feel enigmatic, that feel vulnerable, that feel real. Being in moments with people like Wendy Williams, being in these moments with them with people who also don't always, despite being in front of camera all the time, have all the faculties upon them to do everything that they need. Again, creating more space. Domingo Coleman. This section is really a lot about people being kind of shy, and me kind of holding space for them, especially Roddy Ricch here, whose first album was basically titled I'm Insecure, more or less. And continuing to create work for myself, telling more stories that I think that matter, pitching stories like this, Dr. Harry Edwards, who is the architect of the 1969 Olympic Games, Jesse Owens, Tommy Smith, fist up in the air, that iconic image. That moment happened because of him. He was the architect behind that civil rights movement. He's the reason why Kaepernick took a knee. He's been in civil rights and sports for over 50 years. And this was a story that I pitched back to another magazine, Victory, to tell. Janet Mock and Tracy Norman from Pose, telling her real story through a TV show about her being a trans woman in the modeling industry and being outed after a few months of modeling and never working again. Maybe we recognize this guy. Curbed. And this is more the polish work. People who are very faceted in doing what they do. And me still trying to kind of push the space and push the color, using my tools. There's no sun there, that's me in the background. And this is kind of wrapping up this work, this presentation of more personal work and me going to Afropunk and reminding myself that I don't need a team after using teams and support for years, and going back out and just being on my own and getting portraits and practicing how to isolate in big crowds and create images and pull people in. And so yeah, like I said, back to personal work. This is the very last project I'm going to show you. This is personal for me. This is a short film called The Box that I jumped onto, talking about solitary confinement. Again, always about creating space for me. We pulled 3 subjects who have accumulated over 30 years in solitary confinement, including James here, who started at 17. They're all out now, but they have stories that they make my body chill as I even say, as I even think about it. For me, sometimes creating space means really being there with someone. Pam on the right, we didn't think going into this project that we were going to recreate this space. That was not originally the plan, but it was something that was brought up by one of the subjects. And so we were like, maybe we should. And so we did, and it was hard. It was really hard. Pam and I both cried after shooting this portrait. It was really heavy. But again, as I've said throughout this lecture series, it's usually not about the image for me. It's about creating space for people, and it opens up so much when you do.
Hi, I'm Busayo. Quick question. You said you don't shoot women subjects as up close as you do male subjects. Why is that?
Honestly, I do. I think it's more the idea that I put more emphasis when I'm with men on doing it. I think there's a lot of soft images of women. I think there's a lot of intimate images of women out there. I think for me, as a man, I'm more interested in creating more imagery of men that are softer. So yeah, it's not so much that I don't do it, it's that I just put more emphasis on it with the men that I'm with.
Anyone else?
Thank you for your presentation. I'm curious if you could say more about your planning process going into a shoot. You seem so intentional, from the lighting to the music. The playlist seems really bespoke to whoever you're shooting with. How do you go about researching, planning to organize the vibe you want to create for each individual shoot?
I always ask a lot of questions. I ask as many as I can. I want to know what the story is. I always ask my editor before I even start looking stuff up, what are you trying to do here? Why are they on the page? That's what I always ask first. And then I go into, honestly, I go into Pinterest still, and I just throw up on a page. I put everything on the page that I could possibly think of, even if it doesn't connect. Maybe it's just an idea that I had a year ago that I wanted to try, I'll put it on the page. And then after I get the story and I have everything on a page that's got 100, 200 images on it, I start to pull things away. And then I'll have maybe 30 images left after pulling things away, and I'd be like, and I'll see a through line, whether it be the light or an idea from the story that I can pull in to some of the images already on the page. And then from there, I start to sort of organize a bit more and then hone in on what we're really trying to do. But ultimately, I'm constantly pitching. So it's very rare that I'm like, this is the idea. It's normally that even with editorial, I'm pitching 3 ideas. We can go this way. I would love to go this way. This way's safe. And I like to give my editors options.
At this stage in your career, what percentage of your work comes to you versus the percentage of your work that you have to go out and get?
Oh, that's an interesting question. It's interesting because I think it's usually both. I say it like that because I still definitely have to promote myself. I just got an agent like a year ago that's very new for me. Even with my agent now, I'm still chasing. Things are coming in, people are inquiring, but even after the inquiry, I'm still really having to put myself out there. The pitching, the bids are getting bigger. I'm having to explain myself even more. I'm having to give more background on myself and why I fit, even more so than I used to. So that's why I find it an interesting question, because it really is constantly both. Yeah. But as I said, even now, I think more now than before, bigger projects especially, I'm really having to put myself forward and say, not just, oh, thanks for like thinking of me, here's work that I've done, but hey, like I did this shot and I think it's going to work because the way that I did it is going to work with this subject and this style and this story that you're trying to tell, and then lead them through a portfolio piece that I put together specifically for them that tells the story of why I should be doing it, which also includes me writing a lot of copy. Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course.
Any last questions? Yes,
Well, first I wanted to say how beautiful the Chris Rock one, especially the color palette, was so gorgeous and the lighting, and but it was also really interesting to see your school, the work from SVA that you did, and then how you made that leap into the first job. So I was just curious, was the pitch different then? Like obviously because it's straight out of
I'll be very honest. You know, one thing I didn't mention in this lecture is that, you know, we, as photographers, it feels very isolating to make work on your own, even in teams. But we really don't do this by ourselves. Everyone gets help. And I usually like to talk about that a bit. That was a pivotal moment for me. I have an older sister who used to be in advertising. She's 8 years older than me. So, you know, I have a background in advertising. I used to be on the agency side. I used to, she introduced me to that, what pitching was, and I used to be an arm for that agency on the West Coast here by looking at new talent. It was very simple. But with that said, at that moment, she knew someone at Complex, and she just got me the meeting. And so they were like, yes, I'll take the meeting, because as I said in my lecture, they were like, this is weird. I like this work. I think we can use this for advertising because you know how to light. And so that was the connection. They were like, you're doing really weird color and like just portraits, and we think we can use that. So they did. Yeah, of course.
Actually, I don't think I need the mic.
Yeah, it's for our recording.
Oh, for the recording.
Yes, wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
First of all, my name is Erwin, by the way. Would you mind talking about a time you may have had a difficult subject? You're pitching the idea, but there maybe not picking up on it right away, and how you were able to turn that around?
Actually, Chris Rock. And like, as I said, he was really sick that day. So it was probably for a multitude of reasons. I've heard he was difficult for other artists as well, but I also just think he was just not feeling well. He was a difficult subject. He was not in the mood, and that took some coercing. And so I think, to really answer your question, there's only been a few moments in my career where I've really had to sort of dig in. And those are moments of perseverance. You don't let up. Kill them with kindness. I rely on that heavily. Yeah, totally.
That's great. If you would, just before we let you go, tell us just a little bit more about Color Positive, the
Oh yeah,
nonprofit.
of course. Yes. So I do have a nonprofit, Color Positive. I launched it 4 months before the pandemic, and it was something that I had launched, actually connected to what I just said. One of my first jobs in the industry was looking at talent. Like I just got to New York, I'm in school, but I'm looking at talent at LeBook for this agency on the West Coast. Looking at new talent, offering them stuff, art directors, photographers, etc. I've been looking at talent since then, since 2020. And it's just always been something I've been so passionate about. I love knowing who's making work. I love seeing the other people out there besides myself. I love being tapped into what the industry is doing. And so I've just been doing that for so long as a side hustle, not even always getting paid, that there was enough people in the industry on the ad side who kept hitting me up. And it got to the point where I was like, I need to make an effort in organizing myself. And so, long story short, it was also redirecting where the efforts were going. So I thought to myself, you know what, I think my community really needs some help right now. And so I built this website, Color Positive, to highlight Black artists. And it's an a la carte program. I promote the artists on the website. I don't touch the website very often, but if you follow the Instagram, I touch it every day. I put at least one person up every day. Every morning I spend an hour looking at just scrolling every morning. And through that, I also bring artists into schools. I really want to bridge the gap. There's a huge influx of new photographers right now across the board into the industry. And it's because of technology. And that's great, but there really needs to be help bridging the gap between what used to be a really sort of straightforward, I'm going to assist you, I'm going to learn from someone, I'm going to go to school and learn the ropes and learn the etiquette and learn the craft, to people just sort of getting a camera and start shooting. Or being on YouTube. These are great tools, but there's a lot of things in between that are missing. And so I really want to help bridge the gap with high school students who don't even know that they can have a career yet in photography, are just starting to learn that. And then also college students or college age students who are starting to shoot and need a push, need mentorship, need real guidance. So I do it at different levels. And then beyond that, I have still that network. So every few weeks I get, hey, Jay, we have a really big job coming up. Who are you going to suggest? And so I pitch people all the time. And I do bi-weekly sit-downs with new artists. I'm constantly doing downloads with new artists to make sure I understand who they are so that I can pitch them correctly. And this is all, pro bono. It's just something I've just been doing for a long time. And it's just something that I think is necessary.
Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you so much.